I married the most popular boy in school, but he was gay, so he gave me 3 rules on our wedding night: don't talk to me, don't touch me, and stay out of my business. But I didn't realize that later he himself broke each of those rules. My eyes went wide as I tried to process what Michael had just said. No touching, no talking. He told me, wait, what kind of marriage is this? He didn't say anything else, just stood up and walked into the bathroom, leaving me staring at nothing. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. A few minutes later, he came out. He climbed into bed without a word, switched off his lamp, and went to sleep. Lay there staring at him, thinking, is this real? What had I gotten myself into? My mind raced with possibilities, but I was too exhausted to do much more than roll over and turn off the lamp. I prayed the night would be over quickly. The next morning I woke up in a strange room. It took me a moment to remember that I was married. I turned to look at the bed next to me, but Michael wasn't there. I could hear water running from the bathroom, so I slipped out of bed, put on a robe, and made my way downstairs. Quickly got to work making breakfast: pancakes, some sauce, and a glass of milk for him. When I heard him coming down the stairs dressed sharply in a black suit, and I greeted him with a smile, good morning, he didn't even respond. I was taken aback, but tried again. I made breakfast, hope you like it. He picked up his briefcase, ignored me, and walked straight out the door, saying, when I give a rule, I expect it to be followed. I stood there stunned. Was this a joke? How could we be married? And he wouldn't even talk to me. What kind of relationship was this? I tried to brush it off for the time being. Maybe when he came back I could talk to him about all this. The hours dragged by, and still he wasn't home. I made dinner hoping he'd at least come back for that, but by midnight he still hadn't shown up. I gave up waiting, climbed into bed, turned off the light. Out of nowhere I opened my eyes to find Michael staring at me. I nearly had a heart attack. When did he come back? How did he get in without me hearing him? He didn't say a word. I just stared at him, too scared to ask. He didn't even wake me up when he came in. I was so confused I turned away, trying to ignore the growing frustration inside me. The next day I woke up late again and went about my routine. I had to go to work. I showed up to work, and my cause worker were all surprised to see me. What's up? No honeymoon? Marilyn asked with a they were all surprised to see me here instead of spending the night with Michael, as they started teasing me. Agatha got a little too curious, checking for any signs of a wild night, hickeys and all that. When she found none, she couldn't believe it. Michael the wild man had been surprisingly gentle, or so she thought. They were all insisting that I owed them a girls' night out. You didn't take us to the club before the wedding, you promised. Agnes reminded me. I sighed, knowing I couldn't get out of it. I'd have to convince Michael to let me go out tonight. Maybe he'd say yes, but who knew? Later I got home. I sent a text to Janet letting her know I'd be there soon. As I waited I realized I still didn't have Michael's number. I hadn't even asked for it. But before I could do anything I heard the door open, and there he was, back from wherever he'd been. I tried again to talk to him. I made dinner, want me to heat it up. He ignored me and kept walking up the stairs. I'm going out with my friends. I tried, but he stopped dead in his tracks, turned around, his eyes burning into mine. I gave you a rule. Do you need me to spell it out again? No talking to me. His words hit me like a punch. I tried to hide how hurt I was, but it was hard. Okay, am I allowed to go out with the girls? Asked quietly. He didn't answer, just walked up the stairs. I couldn't help but sigh and make my way out. At least I could escape this weirdness for a bit. I caught a cab and headed to the club. Meanwhile, in the upstairs room, Michael stood by the window and watched the taxi disappear into the distance. Go and find the club. Mrs. Brown is going to, he ordered. You have 10 minutes in the club. I drank with my friends, listened to music, and talked and laughed. I didn't know Michael was in the club. The bodyguards greeted him respectfully, and he strode in, scanning the room with piercing blue eyes. He picked me up right from the VIP lounge upstairs. I was sitting at the bar talking to my friends, laughing. He frowned when he noticed I was wearing a short red skirt. A group of men came up to us and offered to buy drinks. He accepted it readily and began to drink without a word. Michael watched the scene grimly, clenching his teeth, when one of them leaned and put his arm around my waist. Michael's patience finally reached its limit. He stood up angrily. Michael's patience finally reached its limit. He stood up, his chair scraping violently against the floor of the VIP section. Before I could even register his presence, a hand made of steel clamped around the wrist of the man who was touching my waist. The stranger yelped, spilling his drink. I believe Michael's voice was a low growl, barely audible over the bass of the music, but terrifyingly clear, that the lady is married. The man stammered, looking into Michael's piercing blue eyes. I didn't know. She didn't say. Now you know. Michael shoved the man backward. He didn't look at the man again. His eyes were fixed on me. The air between us crackled. The Michael I knew, the one who ignored my pancakes and walked past me like I was a ghost, was gone. This man was dangerous, radiating a dark, possessive energy that made my breath hitch. Get up, he commanded. I'm having fun with my friends, I said, trying to find my voice, though my heart was pounding. You said stay out of your business. My business is having a drink. My business, he hissed, leaning down so his face was inches from mine, is ensuring my wife doesn't demean herself in a place like this. Without waiting for my permission, he grabbed my hand. Rule number 2, no touching. He had just broken it. His grip was firm but not painful. He pulled me out of the booth. My friends sat in stunned silence, mouths agape. Agnes gave me a look that screamed call me later, but I was already being towed through the crowd. Michael didn't stop until we were outside. The cool night air hit my flushed face. A sleek black limousine pulled up instantly, the driver holding the door open. Michael practically tossed me into the back seat before sliding in beside me. Drive, he ordered. The partition went up, sealing us in silence. I rubbed my wrist, staring at him. He was looking out the window, his jaw clenched so hard a muscle feathered in his cheek. You touched me, I whispered. He stiffened but didn't look at me. You broke a rule, Michael. You were making a fool of yourself, he said coldly, still not looking. I stepped in to save my reputation, not you. Your reputation? I laughed bitterly. Everyone thinks you're gay, Michael. What reputation are you saving? That you have a beard for a wife who you hate. For the first time he turned his head. His eyes weren't just cold. They were turbulent, like a storm at sea. He looked me up and down, lingering on the short red skirt. Is that what you think? He asked softly. It's what everyone says. It's why you made the rules. You don't want a woman touching you. He let out a short, humorless laugh and looked away again. Believe what you want. Just stay inside the house. The next 2 weeks were a strange game of cat and mouse. Michael went back to ignoring me, but something had shifted. He was home more often. Before, he would disappear until midnight. Now, I'd hear the front door open at 6 p.m. I would be in the living room reading, and he would walk past, loosen his tie, and go to his study. He was watching me. I could feel it. One rainy Tuesday, I decided to test the boundaries. I was bored, lonely, and tired of walking on eggshells. I needed to know who I had married. I went into his study while he was at work, breaking rule number 3, stay out of my business. The room smelled of mahogany and his expensive cologne. I walked to his desk. It was immaculately organized. I opened the top drawer. Nothing but pens. I opened the bottom drawer. There was a file. It wasn't about business stocks or mergers. It was a dossier. And it was about me. My heart hammered against my ribs. There were photos of me from college, photos of me at the coffee shop, even a photo of me walking my dog 3 years ago. What is this? I whispered to myself. That, a deep voice came from the doorway, is none of your concern. I jumped, dropping the file. Michael was leaning against the doorframe. He had come home early. I expected him to yell. I expected him to invoke the rules. Instead, he walked over, picked up the file, and tossed it onto the desk. Why do you have photos of me from before we met? I asked, my voice trembling. We met long before you realized, he said cryptically. He walked around the desk and sat down looking weary. Get out, Clara. No, I said, planting my feet. You know everything about me. I know nothing about you except that you're the popular boy who hates his wife. Why did you marry me, Michael? If you like men, why bind yourself to me? He looked at me for a long time. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. I never said I liked men, he finally said. I blinked. But everyone says. I let them say it, he interrupted. It keeps women away. It keeps complications away. Then why marry me? He stood up abruptly, towering over the desk. Because you were the only one who didn't look at me like a bank account. Now get out. I fled the room, my mind reeling. He wasn't gay. He was just broken or dangerous. 3 days later, I fell ill. It started as a scratchy throat and escalated rapidly into a raging fever. By evening, I couldn't stop shivering. I lay in bed, buried under 3 quilts, my teeth chattering. I heard the door open. Michael. I expected him to sleep in the guest room if he saw me sick. He hated weakness. He hated interaction. Clara. His voice sounded different. Closer. I groaned, turning my head. The room was spinning. Suddenly, a cool hand was on my forehead. Rule number 2 broken again. You're burning up, he muttered. Eith, fine I raspt. Don't touch me. The rules. Screw the rules, he swore softly. The next few hours were a blur of delirium, but I remember specific sensations. I remember strong arms lifting me up. I remember him holding a glass of water to my lips, his voice gentle, urging me to drink. Come on, drink for me. I remember him taking a cold cloth and wiping my face. At some point in the middle of the night, I woke up shivering violently. The cold was in my bones. I felt a dip in the mattress. Michael didn't just sit next to me, he slid under the covers. He pulled me against his chest. He was warm, solid, and smelled of safety. Michael, I mumbled. You're touching me. Shoo, he whispered into my hair. Go to sleep. He held me all night. The barrier was breaking. The ice prince was melting, but I was too sick to understand why. I recovered, but the dynamic in the house had changed irrevocably. Michael could no longer pretend I didn't exist. We ate breakfast together. He didn't speak much, but he didn't leave immediately. He would drink his coffee and watch me over the rim of his cup. Then the outside world crashed in. I was leaving the grocery store when a black van screeched to a halt in front of me. 2 men in masks jumped out. I screamed, dropping my bags, but they grabbed me before I could run. Get in, one shouted. Suddenly, a sports car roared into the parking lot, drifting sideways and blocking the van. Michael. He got out of the car, not with panic, but with a terrifying, calculated calm. He held a handgun. Let her go, Michael said. His voice was steady, void of emotion, which made it all the more terrifying. This is business, Michael. One of the masked men yelled, holding a knife to my throat. You crossed the Petrov family. Now you pay. You touched my wife, Michael said, raising the gun. That was your last mistake. 2 shots rang out. I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them, the men were on the ground, injured, not dead, I realized later. Michael was precise, and Michael was running toward me. He holstered the weapon and grabbed my face, scanning me for injuries. Did they hurt you? He demanded, his eyes wild. No. Michael, you have a gun? Who are you? Get in the car. No. Tell me what is going on. Stay out of my business. That's what you said. But your business just tried to kidnap me. He slammed his hand against the roof of the car. I am trying to keep you alive. I run one of the largest private security firms in the country. I have enemies. That is why I have rules. That is why I wanted you to stay away from me. Because you hate me? Because if they know I care about you, you become a target, he shouted. The confession hung in the air. I stared at him. If you care about me? He looked devastated that the words had slipped out. He grabbed me and pulled me into a hug, burying his face in my neck. He was shaking. I've loved you since high school, Clara, he whispered against my skin. I was the popular kid, and you were the quiet girl in the library. I watched you from afar. I built this empire, and it got dangerous. When my father forced me to marry to secure the company, I chose you because I thought I could protect you. I thought if I was cold, if I kept my distance, my enemies wouldn't look at you. They would think it was a sham marriage. He pulled back, his eyes wet. But I can't do it anymore. I can't follow the rules. We drove back to the house in silence, but it was a different kind of silence. It was charged with adrenaline and revelation. When we got inside, he locked the door and turned to all the security systems. He was in commander mode. We have to leave town for a few days until my team cleans this up, he said, pacing the living room. Michael, I said, standing in the middle of the room. He stopped and looked at me. Pack a bag. Quickly. No. He frowned. Clara, this isn't a debate. The rules, I said, stepping closer to him. You broke the touching rule. You broke the business rule. I told you those are done, he said dismissively. There's one left, I said, my heart pounding in my throat. He went still. No talking. No. Y whisperat. You talked. You explained. But you haven't really talked to me. You haven't told me what you want. He closed the distance between us in 2 strides. The tension that had been building since our wedding night, the confusion, the hurt, the fear, it all coalesced into this moment. I don't want to talk, he murmured, his gaze dropping to my lips. Then break the rule. I challenged him. He crashed his lips onto mine. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, hungry, fueled by years of suppressed longing and the adrenaline of the near kidnapping. He kissed me like he was drowning and I was air. I wrapped my arms around his neck, pulling him closer. He groaned, lifting me up, just like he had when I was sick, but this time with a very different intent. I wrapped my legs around his waist. He carried me up the stairs, kicking the bedroom door open. No more rules, he growled against my lips as he lowered me onto the bed. No more rules, I agreed. The next morning, I woke up, but the bed wasn't empty. Michael was there, one arm thrown possessively over my waist, his face buried in the pillow next to mine. The sun was streaming in. I watched him sleep for a moment. The harsh lines of his face were softened. He looked younger, like the boy I remembered from school. He stirred, opening one eye. When he saw me, a slow, lazy smile spread across his face, a smile I had never seen before. Good morning, he rasped. Good morning, I smiled back. You're still here. I'm not going anywhere, he said, pulling me closer. I called my team. The threat has been neutralized. We're safe. And the rules? I asked, tracing the line of his jaw. I have new rules, he said, capturing my finger. Oh really? I raised an eyebrow. And what are they? He kissed my palm. Rule number 1, you talk to me. About everything. If you're happy, if you're sad, if I'm being an idiot. You tell me. I can do that, I nodded. Rule number 2, he moved his hand to my waist, his thumb rubbing circles on my skin. You touch me. Whenever you want. Wherever you want. I need to know you're here. I felt a blush rise to my cheeks. I think I can manage that one too. And rule number 3, his eyes turned serious, the blue intense and deep. We are partners. My business is your business. We face the world together. No more hiding. No more protecting you by pushing you away. I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. I like these rules much better. He grinned, leaning in to kiss me again. I thought you might. 1 year later, the gala was in full swing. Chandeliers glittered overhead, and the room was filled with the city's elite. I stood by the balcony, holding a glass of champagne. I was wearing a stunning red dress, reminiscent of the skirt I wore that night at the club, but much more elegant. Mrs. Sterling, a voice drawled. It was Agatha, my old coworker. She looked at me with wide eyes. I still can't believe it. You and Michael Sterling. The power couple. I smiled. It's been a crazy year, Agatha. And to think, she whispered loudly, leaning in. We all thought he was, you know. I know, I laughed. People think what they want. A warm hand slid around my waist. I didn't flinch. I leaned into it. Michael appeared beside me, looking devastating in a tuxedo. He nodded politely to Agatha, then turned his full attention to me. The look in his eyes was scorching. Ready to go? He murmured in my ear. We just got here, I teased. I don't care, he said, nuzzling my neck, not caring who was watching. I want to take my wife home. I have some rules I need to break. I laughed, turning to face him. Michael, there are no rules anymore. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that was reserved only for me. Exactly. He took my hand, intertwining our fingers. We walked out of the ballroom together, heads held high, leaving the whispers and the rumors behind us. We didn't need them. We had each other, and for the first time in my life, I knew exactly what kind of marriage this was. It was real.